Life is full of big moments. Getting married, having kids, moving into a new home. These are the kind of moments that change everything. And they might have you making changes to things you don't always think about, like your health coverage. Covered California wants you to know that when you have a big life change, you may be able to enroll in health coverage or adjust your current plan. The enrollment window is limited, so to see if you qualify or to find one of our local experts, visit coveredca.com today. Covered California. It's more than just healthcare. It's life care.
In 1995, John Suk founded Deep Elm Records. Today, 20 years later, Deep Elm Records boasts over 220 releases. We celebrate the pioneering spirit and the awesome artists that make up Deep Elm Records each week here on the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. The unofficial Deep Elm Podcast begins now. Hello, I'm Wayne, and welcome to the 15th episode of the Deep Elm Podcast, the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, and it's hard to believe. 15 episodes already. Man, we just keep on cranking. And tonight we are going to be featuring Chapter 6 of our ongoing series on the Emo Diaries. This one is entitled The Silence of My Heart. Let's get right down to it. Quote, "The good people at Deep Elm have somehow again succeeded in assembling hitherto unreleased tracks from a host of little-known bands into a body of work that burrows straight to your soul and ekes out every possible emotion known. The Silence in My Heart, the Emo Diaries Chapter 6, is intensely moving stuff, with warm textures, desolate atmospherics, and soul-jarring dynamics. From crashing density to whispering introspection, this record not only serves as a picture-perfect snapshot of the varying post-hardcore styles, but will introduce you to songs and bands that will stay with you the rest of your life. Stunning." That review comes from Kerrang, and it just seems like somehow, some way, despite everything going against the Emo Diaries compilation succeeding, the people at Deep Elm just put out amazing work, release after release. Now, the Emo Diaries Chapter 6 features music by Benton Falls, Lewis, Dead Red Sea, Dear Diary out of Germany, Barcode out of Sweden, Stewart out of Sweden, the Desert City Soundtrack, Hanging on a Thread out of Italy, a band called Not, N-A-H-T, out of Japan, Anderson, Honeysuckle Serentina out of Canada, and Southpaw out of England. So quite a diverse mixture of cultures, quite a diverse mixture of countries involved in this particular release, meaning that Deep Elm is truly, at this point, a worldwide label. So Deep Elm was riding a high amount of success going into Chapter 6 here that was released in mid-2000. So tonight we're going to be hearing 4 selections from Chapter 6 of the Emo Diaries, The Silence in My Heart. We're going to be hearing from the aforementioned Benton Falls, Well Spent by Anderson, Everything's Changed by a group called Lewis, and Hanging on a Thread with their track Flavor. Now, 2 of these were chosen by Deep Elm Insiders. That would be the Benton Falls track and the Lewis track. The Benton Falls track was also chosen by fan submission, as well as one of my personal hits. So, I mean, you got the 3 right there. You have the 3 strikes, I suppose. But in this case, you're not out, you're in. And I chose the Hanging on a Thread track due to quite a bit of critical acclaim for that particular track, and Anderson's Well Spent was one of my personal favorites. So let's kick this off with Benton Falls, a longtime member of the Deep Elm family, have been active up until about 2014, but this is a release from 2000 called Tell Him on episode 15, Chapter 6 of the Emo Diaries, The Silence in My Heart. perfect song for Chapter 6 of the Emo Diaries. If you've been following the progression of the story, you notice that Chapter 6, The Silence in My Heart, comes after Chapter 5, I Guess This Is Goodbye, and that is probably one of the most perfect breakup songs I have ever heard. Tell Him by Benton Falls. Quite a few releases by Benton Falls on the Deep Elm label. www.deepelm.com, where you can name your own price on anything in the store. Up next, we're going to have a band called Anderson out of the United States. Their title, or their track for this particular title, Chapter 6, The Silence in My Heart, is called Well Spent. But let me read another review here. It seems as though as the Deep Elm Emo Diaries series progressed, the reviews just became more and more multipluous, or they just became, I guess, is multipluous a word? I don't know. But they just grew and grew and grew and grew. This one is from Gray Noise. Quote, Deep Elm knows exactly how to make a compilation, and the Emo Diaries gets even better this time around with Chapter 6, The Silence in My Heart. All the sounds seem to come together to create something great. A happy note, a sad note, they eventually all blend together in a euphoric tide of noise, crashing down in all the right places. Each band seems to know exactly when to twist your heart and when to let go and allow you to recover. After listening to The Silence in My Heart, you'll want to complete the diary by grabbing the other 5 chapters in this great series. That is from a publication called Gray Noise. And then from Paste Punk, quote, the Emo Diaries compilations have been largely successful because of their ability to back it up with nearly an hour of shockingly good music each and every time. Chapter 6, The Silence in My Heart, follows this pattern to a T. Contained within these 12 songs of teetering energy and pain is far more than words could ever express. Southpaw starts things off with a song racked with harmonic vocals and poppy guitars. It's just the right amount of energy to get things going. Others include Benton Falls, the aforementioned Benton Falls, who you just heard, with whom I am really impressed. Their unique combination, of thick guitars and bass mated to loud and booming vocals just takes off. This guy can sing! There is also Hanging on a Thread, unleashing a ferocious attack that rages hard, and Anderson, who bring forth a very smooth, textured sound. I've listened to this record with attention that few pieces in my collection get. Darn good music wins again. Once again, that was from Paste Punk. And you can read all of the reviews on the Deep Elm website, www.deepelm.com. Just go to the band section, click on the left-hand side, you'll see the Emo Diaries, and there they are, laid out for you like a beautiful bouquet of music at a name-your-price basis. Anderson, up next with Well Spent, here on episode 15 of the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, Chapter 6 of the Emo Diaries, The Silence in My Heart. You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com.
Fading daylight. And now I'm serving up the last long day, and I'm never running out of sleep. Keeping track of fire memories deep. List of urgent failures sing. Secrets come slow. Secrets come slow. Omission lessons. Regrets, open lessons. Hope you're feeling well too. Hope you're feeling.
Some fans of Anderson can be found in the reviews for Chapter 6 of the Emo Diaries, The Silence in My Heart, especially Action Attack Helicopter, who says that on the 6th chapter of the Emo Diaries, The Silence of My Heart, unquestionably displayed is the universality of the genre and its effect on independent musicians everywhere. Many of the artists rock in a unique and interesting manner, giving the listener a boost of fresh energy and creativity. Rising to the challenge, they emerge with superb contributions. The highlight of the album is Anderson. Their contribution contains a chorus breakdown ideal in its eerie harmonies. It's almost perfect. For those who haven't heard a copy of the Emo Diaries, this would be a good chapter with which to start. Individuals who are already fans of the series will definitely appreciate the added creativity. This chapter sparkles. Now, in another review, somebody mentions the song that's going to be coming up, actually a Deep Elm insider pick here on the unofficial Deep Elm podcast. In this review, they talk about the finger-picking and whispering of the band Lewis. Lewis, who released a couple of tracks on Deep Elm's label, or a couple of albums on Deep Elm's label about 12, 13 years ago, appears on this compilation with a track called Everything's Changed, which is a Deep Elm Insider favorite here on the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, episode 15, chapter 6 of the Emo Diaries, The Silence in My Heart. You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com. That was Lewis, the song called Everything's Changed. I love the tempo and timbre of that song, how it goes. It goes from slow and melodic to it goes into the hard guitars. I always loved that type of music, and that song is definitely a keeper from Lewis off of Chapter 6, The Silence in My Heart. So, before we wrap this up, there's some exciting news from Deep Elm this week. Deep Elm will be releasing their 13th sampler CD or sampler gathering, I suppose. I'm not sure whether to call it a compilation, but it is a sampler of the bands that are currently on the Deep Elm label called This Heart of Mine, and that will be dropping in late July. More news about that as it becomes available. It was just released this week by the label that they will be putting out the 13th sampler in late July. So some good stuff coming out of that. And I think it's going to be a really, really good album just to show people what Deep Elm is doing these days. Should be a great mix of music, especially with the recent releases from Late Night Conditions, Sons of London. You have the post-rock phenomenon known as Lights in Motion, and Carly Commando. You just have so many different sounds and flavors and textures that this is going to be one hell of a sampler, and I've already contacted John about doing a show on this sampler. So we're going, as time comes closer, we're going to know more, but we know that this will be releasing in late July. This Heart of Mine, the 13th sampler from Deep Elm Records. So some good news there. We're going to close out with a track by Hanging on a Thread is the name of the group, and the track is entitled Flavor. Hanging on a Thread gets mentioned in numerous reviews, like this one, Deep Fry Bonanza says, Hanging on a Thread is part of what makes this album truly, and the Deep Elm label in general, truly a worldwide force. And it just keeps mentioning this track, Hanging on a Thread. From Yacht Scene, I was particularly impressed with Hanging on a Thread. The record as a whole is very good as well, but particularly impressed with Hanging on a Thread. And it just Hanging on a Thread comes up in practically every review here. It's kind of strange to think that maybe we haven't heard of Hanging on a Thread since this, but there are just so many bands and so many treasures on these Emo Diaries compilations, and that's because of the unique selection process. Each track has been hand-picked by the people at Deep Elm themselves. Hand-picked, meaning that they listened to hundreds of submissions from around the world, and these were the ones that made the cut. The best of the best. Not based on whether you're an independent force, not based on whether you have money or push, or not based on fan base, not based on anything, just based on the music. And that is part of the purity that I love about Deep Elm Records. www.deepelm.com. Name your price on any release in their amazing, spacious catalog. That about does it for episode 15 of the Unofficial Deep Elm podcast. Remember, we are on Twitter, Unofficial DEP. Go ahead and follow us there. Also on Facebook, the Unofficial Deep Elm Podcast Facebook page. And we record live every night, or every Saturday night, excuse me. Every night, that would be amazing. Every Saturday night, we record live here on Spreaker.com. And then this broadcast is sent into the universe via SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play. So wherever you like to listen to your podcast, whether it be on iTunes, Google Play, or SoundCloud, which is the method that me and the folks at Deep Elm had discussed sending out, because the presentation for SoundCloud is just marvelous and magnificent. But I know there are a lot of people out there who like Google Play, who like iTunes, so we're there as well. If you want to catch up on any of the episodes, any of the previous 14 or this 15th one, you can go to many different places to listen and hear them all in order and see if they make sense. For all of us here at the Unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, I am Wayne, your not-so-humble host, saying, as always, stay independent and have a great week. Next week, Chapter 7, a very, very emotional release. I mean, these are the Emo Diaries, so you expect emotion, but this one in particular was extremely emotional for Deep Elm, for John, a New York native, because this compilation piece, this 7th chapter came out after the events of September 11th. So you don't want to miss it. Chapter 7 next week. But we're going to finish out Chapter 6 with a song by the aforementioned Hanging on a Thread. This is entitled Flavor, here on the Unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. Have a great week, everybody.
You are listening to the Unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com. You are listening to the Unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com.
Only AT&T offers unlimited data with HBO included. And you never pay overages. Plus, save $25 a month on DirecTV. It's entertainment your way. After 22 gigabytes of data usage, AT&T may slow speeds. Include Stream Saver and videos will stream in standard definition unless you turn it off. $25 DirecTV discount requires eligible video service. Credits start within 3 bill cycles. Service prices subject to change. Other restrictions apply. Visit your nearest AT&T store.